I never thought my quiet life would shatter like this. I was just a woman in her mid-40s, invisible in her own home, going through the motions of a marriage that had stopped seeing her until he came back. My stepson, Aiden, 22, kind, gentle, and suddenly no longer a boy. His eyes saw me in a way no one had for years. What started as stolen glances became something I couldn't ignore, something I didn't want to. It wasn't just desire, it was being seen, being felt, being wanted. I knew it was wrong, but I also knew I wasn't dead inside anymore. And sometimes it's not the affair that breaks you, it's the quiet betrayal of being forgotten. This is my story, one you won't forget. If it touches you, please like, subscribe, and share, because someone else out there might be fading quietly too, and maybe this will remind them they're still alive. Welcome to my channel. I never imagined my life would come to this. A woman in her mid-40s, standing alone in a beautiful house, surrounded by things that once made her proud, now just silent objects reflecting how invisible she had become. I smiled at the neighbors. I baked. I cleaned. I did everything a wife was supposed to. But inside, I was unraveling in ways no one could see. My husband was gone again, off on another business trip that stretched from a few days to a few weeks. He came home just long enough to remind me how far apart we were. His presence had become a routine, his absence normal. We talked, yes, but only about things that didn't matter: groceries, weather, his next flight. Our bed was cold. Intimacy was a memory buried beneath years of polite indifference. I told myself this was marriage. I told myself to be grateful. At least he wasn't cruel. At least he came home. At least I had a nice house, security, a name that still meant something in this neighborhood. But I was fading, quietly, completely, at Whirly Spring. Then something happened. He told me he'd be leaving again, this time for almost a month. I smiled, nodded, said I understood. I always did. That was my role. I didn't argue. I never did. But a week after he left, Aiden came home for spring break. My stepson. He was 22 now, tall, polite, the boy I had helped raise since middle school. We were never close. He always kept a respectful distance. Our bond was quiet, formal. I was his stepmother, a figure in the house, someone he greeted kindly, but not intimately. But this time, something was different. Maybe it was the way he looked at me, longer than before. Not inappropriate, not at first, but different, like he saw me in a new light. His compliments weren't casual anymore. They were gentle, intentional. "You look beautiful today," he said one morning in the kitchen. I laughed it off, tried to hide the way my heart skipped, but I felt it, deep down, something stir, something warm, something alive. We started spending time together. By coincidence at first, he'd help me cook, sit beside me on the couch at night, watch TV, ask me about my day. The way he listened made me feel like my words mattered again. I felt the shift. I tried to ignore it, but I wasn't blind. I wasn't numb. Not anymore. His hand would brush mine, and I wouldn't move. He stood a little too close, and I didn't step away. One evening, we sat on the porch, watching the sunset. The silence between us held something electric. He told me how strong he thought I was, how much he admired the way I had held this house together all these years. His voice cut through something inside me, a wall I didn't know I'd built. I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't see my stepson. I saw a man, and that night I couldn't sleep. His words echoed in my mind, his eyes, the softness in his voice, the closeness of his presence. I told myself it was harmless. I was lying. This wasn't just loneliness anymore. This was longing, and the worst part, I liked it. The next morning, when he smiled at me, I felt nervous, excited, scared. Nothing had happened, not yet, but I knew how close we were, and I knew if something didn't stop soon, I might not be able to walk away from what was coming. It happened on a Thursday. The rain was coming down hard. The house was dark from a sudden power outage. I lit candles. The silence felt heavier than usual, thick with something unspoken. Aiden came into the room with 2 glasses of wine. "Thought you could use this," he said, his smile soft. I hesitated, then took the glass. We sat in silence, the rain tapping gently against the windows, flickers of candlelight dancing on the walls. He talked, more openly than ever, about feeling lost, about how being home made him feel safe, how being around me gave him peace. And then he said something that froze me. "You don't even realize how incredible you are, do you?" I looked at him, confused. He didn't look away. "Someone needs to see you," he said, "really see you, someone who makes you feel alive again." My heart raced. I wanted to stop him. I wanted to tell him this was wrong, that it had gone too far. But I didn't. I let his words soak into me. I was starving for them. I told him that sometimes I felt like I was disappearing in this house, that I could scream, cry, collapse, and no one would notice. He reached for my hand, held it gently, and I didn't pull away. His touch was soft, not forceful, not urgent, just sincere. I hadn't felt anything like it in years. He looked into my eyes, and I felt everything I had buried rise to the surface. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was a woman again. He leaned closer. I should have stopped him, but I didn't. Our lips touched, soft, slow, tender. It wasn't lust, it was pain. It was healing. It was the deepest conversation we never had. When it ended, we both sat there quiet, heavy with understanding. We had crossed a line. I stood and said I needed to sleep. Left him in the living room without another word, but I didn't sleep that night. My heart wouldn't calm. My mind wouldn't stop. I had betrayed everything I thought I stood for, and yet I didn't feel regret. I felt alive, touched, seen. I felt something I hadn't felt in a very, very long time. And nothing would be the same again. The next morning I avoided him. I moved through the kitchen like everything was normal, but nothing felt normal. He came in casually, offered to help with breakfast. I nodded, not meeting his eyes, but I could feel it. The tension, the awareness, the unspoken truth between us. We didn't mention the kiss, but it hung there, loud, alive. I kept telling myself it was a moment of weakness, one we could forget, but when his hand brushed mine again, I didn't move. When he reached behind me for a plate, and I felt the heat of his chest against my back, I closed my eyes. Shame and desire swirled in me. Later that day, I caught him watching me, really watching me, not like a boy, not like a stepson, but like a man looking at a woman he desired, and I didn't look away. He started staying in more, making excuses to be around. We went on long walks, talked for hours. He asked about my past, my dreams, my sacrifices, and I realized just how much of myself I had buried to keep a marriage alive that had already died. One night, I told him this had to stop, that it was dangerous, that we were being reckless. He listened, nodded, even apologized, but the next time we were alone, he whispered, "I can't stop thinking about you." He told me I deserved more than to cry alone while my husband slept soundly beside me. And each word stitched something back together in me. One night, he touched my face. "You don't have to keep pretending to be alone just to feel something," he said. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The way I looked at him said everything. That night, the emotional line between us dissolved, and what followed wasn't planned. It was inevitable. I didn't recognize myself anymore. I was a woman split between guilt and hunger, between loyalty and the deep ache of being wanted again. I told myself I was still in control, but I wasn't. The truth was, I had already fallen, and I feared not just being caught, but being abandoned again. Aiden's break was ending soon, and the weight of what we had done grew heavier every day. He started packing, and with every shirt folded, I felt the fragile version of my world collapse. He didn't promise anything. We didn't talk about what came next. And maybe that hurt most of all. I had lived too long in a marriage full of quiet illusions. And now I was drowning in a reality I couldn't undo. The night before he left, he came to me, quiet, unsure. He didn't reach for me. He just looked at me. "I don't regret anything," he said softly, "but I don't want to ruin your life either." I tried to speak, but my throat tightened. I didn't know if it was heartbreak or guilt. When he left the next morning, I stood at the door like a stranger, watching someone walk out of my life without fanfare. No goodbyes, no promises, just silence, and the house returned to its stillness. But this time, it felt colder. My husband came home days later, as if nothing had changed, as if I hadn't changed. He talked about meetings, gave me a souvenir, told me about a funny thing that happened on his trip. He didn't notice the way I avoided his gaze. He didn't see how hollow I had become. I had given myself to someone else, emotionally, physically, and I couldn't hide it from myself anymore. At first, I thought the guilt would devour me, but it didn't. What I felt most was sadness, deep, aching sadness, not just for what I had done, but for the years I had wasted being invisible. The real betrayal wasn't in the kiss. It was in realizing how easily a stranger could see me more clearly than the man I had shared a bed with for decades. Aiden texted once, "Take care of yourself." I stared at the message for hours, then deleted it. I knew we couldn't continue, and I also knew I couldn't go back. I had changed, and that change couldn't be undone. Now I live with a marriage still standing on the outside, but hollow inside. Each day I sit beside a man who believes everything is fine, while I carry the weight of a truth I cannot speak. And maybe that's the real punishment, not being caught, but living with the silence of what I became. I learned something I wish I hadn't. Love without attention is just habit, and attention without commitment is just temptation. Somewhere in between, I lost a version of myself I may never find again. Thank you for being here, for listening to my story. I know it wasn't easy, but sometimes the most painful truths are the ones we carry alone. If something in this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Not for me, but for someone else who might be living in silence, feeling invisible, craving to be seen again. This story isn't about just one woman. It's about all of us who have stayed too quiet, too long. Until next time, be kind to yourself, be honest with your heart, and never forget, you deserve to be seen, loved, and wanted, even if the world forgot how.